Once she pays for my trip, I'll dump her in a care facility. That's what I heard the moment my daughter-in-law forgot to hang up the phone. My chest tightened as the words sank in. Just yesterday, I had written the check for her vacation. Now, with trembling hands, I was already reaching for the file where I kept her credit card information, ready to freeze it all. Please stay with me until the very end of this story, and don't forget to comment the city you're watching from. I want to know how far my words travel. The voice on the other end struck me like a knife to the heart. I stood frozen in my kitchen, cordless phone pressed to my ear. Amelia, my daughter-in-law, had just called to ask a simple question about her upcoming trip to Italy, the one I had been thrilled to gift her and my son, David. She called it their second honeymoon, a way to rekindle their bond after nearly 2 decades of marriage. At 72, what else was my money for if not to bring joy to my family? The $8,000 I spent seemed worth it the moment Amelia wrapped her arms around me, whispering that I was the kindest mother-in-law anyone could ask for. I'd believed her gratitude was real, until the call stayed connected. Her voice shifted, dripping with disdain. Honestly, Claire, this old woman is so easy to fool, Amelia told someone I guessed was her sister, Lydia. She just forked over $8,000 without a second thought. David says I should wait until after the trip to mention the nursing home, but I'm so done pretending to care about her boring little stories. My fingers shook around the receiver. I should have hung up, but the icy cruelty in her tone glued me in place. The best part is she really thinks we're thankful, Amelia went on, laughing. As if we'd waste our vacation thinking about her. This is our escape. Once we're back and relaxed, we'll start looking into facilities. I already found a few that take Medicaid. I collapsed into a chair, my knees buckling. Medicaid? I wasn't broke. I had savings, investments, and a fully paid-off home. Why would she be researching Medicaid unless she planned to drain me first? The timing is perfect, she added smugly. She's been forgetful lately, losing her keys, repeating herself. It'll be easy to convince people she's declining. David agrees. He's tired of her constant calls, her wanting to come for dinner, her clinginess. Professional supervision is long overdue. My so-called senior moments weren't senility. They were loneliness. I misplaced keys because the house felt unbearably silent. I repeated stories because no one listened. I called them daily because since my husband, Frank, passed 5 years ago, they were all I had. Amelia's voice cut through again, sharper this time. We'll stage some fake emergency when we get back, say David needs surgery or something, and trick her into signing over power of attorney. Once that's done, she's off to a cozy little home where strangers can deal with her. The house is worth at least $300,000, and with her savings, David estimates close to $500,000 total. Not a bad reward for putting up with an old woman's whining for a few more weeks. $500,000. They were tallying up my life like I was already buried. My chest ached under the weight of betrayal, but beneath the hurt, something colder began to stir. Amelia giggled again. I'll keep playing the devoted daughter-in-law. I'll smile when she shows me the same baby pictures for the 100th time, pretend to care about her garden club, fake gratitude for her gift. If only she knew how much I resent it. That money should have been ours years ago. Honestly, she'll probably thank us when we put her somewhere safe. She's so desperate for approval she'll convince herself it's love. That laugh, sharp, cruel, and heartless, shattered whatever trance had held me. With shaking hands, I finally ended the call. The kitchen seemed smaller, darker, menacing. My own home, the one Frank and I built over 35 years ago, suddenly felt unsafe. Had every smile, every "we love you, Mom Claire," been a lie? Every Sunday dinner, every compliment on my cooking, was it all staged manipulation? I pulled out my checkbook. The $8,000 check was still fresh in my memory. Romantic Journeys Travel Agency. A gift that now mocked me. I had just financed the celebration of 2 people plotting to discard me like garbage. But as the bitterness clawed at me, a flicker of resolve lit inside. They thought they could plan my future, decide my worth, and corner me like some frail old fool. They were wrong. I wasn't powerless, and I wasn't finished. I walked into my bedroom, opened the old oak jewelry box Frank once used for documents, and pulled out a business card tucked behind my grandmother's pearls. Evelyn Cross, estate attorney. She had handled Frank's will years ago, telling me to reach out if I ever needed help. It was time. Amelia wanted to play games with my life and money, fine. But she had no idea I was better at games than she ever would be. The phone didn't tremble this time as I dialed Evelyn's number. To my relief, she agreed to meet me first thing in the morning. "Claire, you sound shaken," she said gently. "Is everything all right?" "Not yet," I told her. "But it will be." That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Amelia's laugh. I replayed countless dinners and conversations, realizing how many subtle signs I had missed. The glances between her and David, the sighs when I repeated a story, the rolled eyes when I asked for help with my computer. What I thought were family moments, they saw as evidence of decline. And the cruelest realization of all? I had bent over backward to be the perfect mother-in-law. When David brought Amelia home 15 years ago, I had sworn not to interfere, to welcome her with open arms. And this was my reward. I had given them freedom, respected their choices, offered support without meddling. I thought I had built a strong bond with Amelia. But as I lay awake in the dark, memories replayed with a different tint. I remembered the time Amelia admired my diamond earrings, ones Frank had given me for our 30th anniversary. "These are stunning, Mom Claire. They'd look perfect with my gown for the vow renewal David and I are planning." I had slipped them off and handed them over, touched that she wanted to wear them for such a meaningful moment. But there was never any ceremony. She simply kept the earrings. Or the day she praised my grandmother's antique china set, the heirloom I had guarded for decades. "David is so lucky to come from a family with treasures like this," she'd said wistfully. I never had anything this fine growing up. Within a week, I'd insisted she take the set for their dining room. "You'll enjoy it more than I do," I'd said, proud to pass it on. But they never used it. They left it locked in a cabinet like some prize to show off. Looking back, I saw the pattern I had missed. Amelia would sigh over something, drop a comment about never having such luxuries, and I, eager to please, would offer it to her. She would put up just enough of a protest to make me insist, then accept with teary gratitude. I thought I was being generous. In truth, I was being played. Evelyn Cross's office hadn't changed much in 5 years. The same leather chairs, the same bookshelves lined with law journals, the same atmosphere of steady professionalism. But Evelyn herself looked older, with more gray in her hair. Her polished smile softened when she saw me. "Claire, you look exhausted. What's happened?" I had rehearsed my explanation, but once I sat down, the words poured out in a rush. I told her everything, the overheard phone call, Amelia's cruel words, the plans for a nursing facility, and the tallying of my net worth. Evelyn listened carefully, taking notes, her face darkening with each detail. When I finally stopped, she leaned back. "Claire, I have to ask you something uncomfortable. Do you have any memory problems, confusion, or health issues that might support their claims?" Her question stung, but I understood. "No. I forget my keys sometimes, but I'm 72, not 92. My mind is sharp. My doctor gave me a full physical last month, he said I'm in excellent health." Evelyn nodded. "Good. We'll want that documented. But tell me, what outcome do you want here? Do you want to confront them directly?" I shook my head. "Not yet. If I confront them now, they'll only move faster. I need to make sure they can't touch my money or force me into a home." Her expression brightened with approval. "Smart. Here's our plan." She pulled out a yellow pad. First, we'll draft a power of attorney that can only be triggered if two independent doctors confirm cognitive decline. Second, we'll move your assets into a revocable trust with detailed care instructions. Third, we'll add a medical directive stating you are not to be placed in a facility unless you are physically incapable of caring for yourself. How long will it take? I asked. If we work quickly, a week. But Claire, there's something else. We need proof of your competency. If Amelia and David challenge these documents, they'll try to argue you were already impaired. We need airtight medical records. A wave of anger surged through me, remembering Amelia's mocking comments about my senior moments. Can you recommend someone? Yes. Dr. Patricia Klein specializes in geriatric assessments. She's one of the most trusted names in court cases. If she evaluates you, no one will question the results. I'll make the call for you. For the first time in months, I felt something shift, control. I had been drifting, letting Amelia and David steer the family narrative. Every holiday, every dinner plan, every gift, decided by them, while I smiled and complied. But now, I was reclaiming my ground. One more thing, Evelyn said as she stacked the papers. You mentioned their trip. When do they leave? Next Friday. They'll be gone 2 weeks. For the first time that morning, Evelyn smiled, not kindly, but strategically. Perfect. That gives us time. By the time they return, your defenses will be impenetrable. When I walked out of her office, the morning sunlight felt sharper, brighter. For the first time since Frank's death, I felt like myself again, not the lonely widow grateful for scraps of attention, not the bank account dressed as a grandmother. I was Claire Donovan, a woman who had built a life, raised a son, buried a husband, and who wasn't about to be discarded like an old lamp. Amelia and David thought they were planning my future. They had no idea I was already planning theirs. The following days became a careful dance. Outwardly, I played the part of the doting mother and mother-in-law. Inwardly, I was setting up walls of iron. Every polite smile I gave Amelia, every sweet reply to her insincere affection, was part of my act. Wednesday afternoon, she called again. Mom Claire, you're sure about covering the travel insurance too? It's another $300, but David says we really should have it. Of course, dear, I replied warmly. I want you both to enjoy yourselves without worry. You're such a saint, she gushed. I don't know what we'd do without you. Oh, and while we're gone, maybe you shouldn't stay alone in that big house. I could ask Lydia to stop by, maybe even stay a few nights. My blood ran cold. Lydia wasn't offering kindness, she would be Amelia's spy. That's thoughtful, but I'll be fine, I said with practiced calm. I've got my book club and gardening group to keep me busy. Well, if you change your mind, I'll give Lydia your number. When I hung up, it felt like I'd just escaped a trap. Amelia was already planting her watchers, hoping to collect evidence of my decline. But I wasn't about to make her job easy. The next morning, I met Dr. Klein. Her office was full of elderly patients and their children, some doting, others impatient. When it was my turn, she greeted me with warmth and precision. For 2 hours she put me through tests, reciting lists, solving math, drawing figures, answering questions about current events. When she finally closed her notebook, she looked me straight in the eyes. Mrs. Donovan, your cognitive health is excellent. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning sound, and your judgment intact. I'll prepare a full report confirming this. Relief washed over me. Doctor, if someone wanted to declare me incompetent, what would they need to prove? Her face grew serious. They'd need undeniable medical evidence, tests showing severe decline, repeated mistakes that put you in danger, and credible testimony from close family. Without that, their case wouldn't survive. That afternoon, I signed the papers Evelyn had prepared. The power of attorney requiring 2 doctors, the trust shielding my assets, the directive guarding my independence. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable. The advance directive spelled out my care preferences in clear, unmistakable language. As I signed the last page, Evelyn looked at me seriously. "Claire, there's another angle we should consider. What if they don't come at you legally first, but emotionally? They could claim you're hurting David, or even accuse you of being unkind to the grandchildren." I had been thinking the same. David's 2 children, Lily, 16, and Ethan, 14, were bright kids. But I rarely saw them anymore. Amelia always had reasons why they couldn't visit: exams, soccer, dance practice. Slowly, deliberately, she had pushed me out of their lives. "They barely know me now," I admitted, my throat tight. "Amelia made sure of that. She's been cutting me off from them for years." Evelyn nodded grimly. "That's a classic tactic. The manipulator isolates the victim, making themselves the center of control. The more dependent you feel, the more power they gain." Friday arrived faster than I expected. Amelia had insisted on stopping by for coffee before their flight. "I want to say goodbye properly," she'd said sweetly. "And maybe you can finally give me that cookie recipe, Michael just loves them." She swept into my house at 10 sharp, glowing with excitement. Her hair was freshly colored, her nails perfect, her perfume expensive. She carried a designer bag that must have cost more than a month's worth of groceries. "Mom, Claire, you look wonderful," she exclaimed, embracing me with warmth that felt rehearsed. "I'm thrilled for you both," I said, carefully pouring coffee into my second-best china. I no longer trusted her around the family heirlooms. "I brought you something," she said, pulling a tiny wrapped box from her purse. Inside was a pendant necklace, cheap, the sort sold in department stores for $30 at most. I had just spent $8,000 on their vacation, and this was her token of appreciation. "It's lovely," I said softly. "You can wear it and think of us while we're gone," she replied, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. "David is so excited. He's been so stressed lately. This trip is exactly what he needs." Yes, I knew David's anxieties well. He'd been that way since boyhood. But much of his current strain came from Amelia's endless demands for a lifestyle beyond his salary. "Where are you most excited to visit?" I asked, keeping up the act. "Oh, everywhere," she gushed. "Paris, Rome, Barcelona. A wine tour in Tuscany, a cooking class in Lyon, and our Paris hotel has the most amazing spa." As she chattered, I silently did the math. 8,000 covered the basics. But their extras, dining, shopping, activities, would easily burn through another 5. Debt they couldn't afford. Which meant once again, I would be their lifeline, unless they succeeded in locking me away and seizing my savings. Finally, Amelia checked her watch. "I should go. David panics if we're not early to the airport. But, Mom, Claire, I want you to know how much this means to us. You're the most generous person I've ever known." Her perfume lingered after she hugged me again. Everything about her was polished and flawless, and utterly false. "Enjoy yourselves," I said warmly. "We will. And when we get back, maybe we can plan something for your birthday. That jazz restaurant downtown with the band? I think you'd love it." My birthday. She had forgotten it 3 years in a row. Now suddenly it was important, because in her mind, it might be my last one outside a care facility. When she finally drove away, in the car I had helped them buy, the silence that followed was different. Not lonely, but liberating. For 2 weeks, I wouldn't have to pretend. No fake smiles at Amelia's digs about my age. No sighs from David when I asked for help. I was free to protect myself. Evelyn had given me tasks. First, remove Amelia's name from my bank's emergency contacts. Second, change the locks on my house. Third, transfer my investments into the trust. But before anything else, I wanted to visit my safety deposit box. Frank had insisted we keep certain documents secure, and now I suspected I'd need every scrap of leverage I could find. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror as I grabbed my purse. I looked different, sharper, more awake. The woman staring back wasn't a fragile widow. She was a survivor with decades of hard work and sacrifice behind her. Amelia and David thought they had mapped out my future. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first stop was my bank. I'd been a client at Union Trust for 30 years. Robert Chin, the branch manager, had overseen my accounts since Frank's death. He welcomed me with his usual polite concern. "Mrs. Donovan, you seem troubled. Is everything all right?" "I just need to make a few updates," I said carefully. "I'd like to remove my daughter-in-law as an emergency contact and beneficiary." His brows lifted. "Of course. May I ask why? You mentioned before how much she helped with your finances." That had been the problem. I'd been too eager to paint Amelia as the doting daughter-in-law, the perfect helper. Now I had to unwind that story without revealing too much. "I've decided to simplify things. Keep my affairs private." He studied me for a moment but didn't press. We spent an hour making changes, removing Amelia's access, updating my account security, ensuring that no family members could request information on my behalf. When we finished, Robert leaned forward. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but if you're worried about financial manipulation or abuse, we do have support systems." The kindness in his voice nearly undid me. For months, I had second-guessed myself, wondered if I was imagining the coldness behind Amelia's smile. Now, here was a professional validating my fears. "Thank you, Robert," I said softly. "I'm just being cautious." My next stop was the locksmith. Dave, a cheerful man in his 50s, arrived that afternoon to replace every lock. As he worked, he spoke casually about rising cases of elder exploitation. "The saddest part," he said, tightening the new deadbolt, "is that most seniors never see it coming. They trust their families completely." While he finished, I searched the guest room where Amelia and David sometimes stayed. That's when I found it, a folder hidden under the mattress. Inside were printouts of nursing home websites, notes in Amelia's handwriting detailing my assets and their values, even a business card for an attorney specializing in guardianship. My stomach turned as I flipped through the pages. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment plan. Amelia had been plotting for months, calculating my worth, outlining the cost of care facilities, even projecting the tax benefits of selling my home. She wasn't just ambitious. She was dangerous. One note in Amelia's folder chilled me to the bone: "Sees doctor visit, mention memory concerns, get written record of decline." She had been plotting to come along to my next appointment, armed with lies about my confusion and forgetfulness, hoping to convince a doctor to put her accusations in writing. It wasn't paranoia anymore, this was evidence. Cold, deliberate premeditation. I gathered every paper and tucked them into a bag for Evelyn. This wasn't a careless scheme. It was a long-laid plan. By Tuesday morning, I sat in the office of my financial advisor, Janet McMillan. Like Robert at the bank, she had known Frank and me for years. She was sharp, practical, and trusted by half the widows in town. "Claire," she began, pulling up my file, "Evelyn called me yesterday about your new trust." "You're restructuring everything?" "Yes. I want all my investments transferred into the trust and I want to change my beneficiaries." She glanced at the screen. "At present, David is listed as sole beneficiary, your IRA, your accounts, your insurance. Do you want to adjust all of that?" "I do." Her eyes flicked toward me. "That's a big change. May I ask what brought this on?" "Last time we met, you were focused on helping David and Amelia with their long-term goals." I had dreaded this question but was ready. "I've realized I need to be more intentional about my legacy. I want my money to support causes I care about, not just pass automatically to family." Janet considered me for a long moment, then nodded. "Honestly, that's wise. Too many people assume their children will handle inheritances responsibly. That's not always the case. We spent nearly 2 hours restructuring everything. David would still inherit, but only 25%. The rest would go to organizations that had meant something to me for decades: the animal rescue I volunteered with, the library's literacy program, the senior support fund that kept the elderly in their homes. When Janet finished typing, she looked impressed. "Claire, this is one of the most thoughtful estate plans I've seen. You're protecting your family but also making a difference in the community. It's inspiring." If only she knew the real reason. Still, pride swelled in my chest. For once, I felt like I was in control of my story. But Amelia wasn't done with me. Wednesday at noon, Lydia appeared at my doorstep, just as Amelia had warned. She was younger, maybe mid-30s, with the same polished hair and the same fixed smile. She carried a casserole dish and an expression of syrupy concern. "Claire, I hope you don't mind me dropping in. Amelia asked me to check on you while they're away." "That's kind," I said evenly, "but I'm fine. Amelia worries about you alone in this big house. Do you mind if I come in for a few minutes?" Refusing would seem rude, so I stepped aside. Lydia set the casserole on the counter, then let her eyes wander over the room, the family photos on the wall, the stack of unopened mail, the pill bottles visible by the sink. "You know, Amelia mentioned you've been a bit forgetful lately," she said lightly. "Losing track of appointments, misplacing things. That must be hard." "My memory is fine," I answered firmly. Her smile didn't waver. "Of course. Families sometimes worry too much. Still, it's good you have people looking out for you. Living alone can be risky at your age." Every word was straight from Amelia's script. Lydia wasn't here to visit. She was here to gather evidence. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, masking my unease. "That would be lovely," she said, settling in as if she owned the place. Over the next hour, she asked a parade of seemingly harmless questions about my daily routine, my health, how I managed the property. She praised the house, remarked how much upkeep it must be, and even offered to help organize my medicine cabinet, as though she was doing me a favor. After she left, I immediately phoned Evelyn. "She was conducting surveillance," Evelyn said bluntly. "The questions about your memory, the comments about the house being too much, the medicine cabinet offer, that's textbook. They're building a case for incompetence. What should I do if she comes again?" "Be polite, but never let her in unsupervised. Don't let her touch your medications or documents. And Claire, document everything." That evening, I sat with a notebook, recording every detail of Lydia's visit. The casserole, the fishing about memory, the probing about my home, it was all part of a careful setup. Amelia and David thought they had me cornered. They thought their spy was slipping under my guard while they enjoyed wine tours in Tuscany on my money. But they were wrong. Every move they made was being logged. Every ploy preserved as evidence. The trap wasn't theirs, it was mine. 2 weeks later, Amelia and David returned, sun-kissed and glowing with satisfaction. Sunday evening they touched down. By Monday morning Amelia was on the phone, her voice honey-sweet. "Mom, Claire, we're back. Paris was magical, Tuscany was like a dream, we brought you gifts. A scarf from Paris and olive oil from a little village in Italy. Can we come by this afternoon?" At 3 o'clock, they arrived, bags of souvenirs in hand. Amelia was radiant in new clothes, David was animated, his eyes alight with excitement I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, this trip was exactly what we needed," David said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you so much. I feel like myself again." For a moment, watching my son's happiness, I almost wavered. He looked like the little boy I once held, grateful and innocent. But then Amelia's voice echoed in my memory, "Once she pays, we'll put her in a home." That cruel laughter hardened my resolve. "I'm glad you both had a wonderful time," I said, taking the scarf and the bottle of olive oil. They were lovely tokens, but I knew better than to mistake them for genuine love. Amelia settled on my couch, confidence radiating from her every movement. You know, Mom Claire, she began, David and I did a lot of thinking on this trip. About family. About the future. About what's best for everyone. Here it comes, I thought, as Amelia leaned forward with that practiced look of concern. We know it must be overwhelming to manage this big house, the yard, the repairs, all the little things that pile up, she said smoothly. So while we were away, we looked into some wonderful options for you. David chimed in, his tone careful, almost patronizing. Mom, there are beautiful senior communities nearby. You'd still have your own space, but with activities, social circles, even medical staff if needed. It's really ideal. Amelia's eyes glittered as she pulled out her phone. We browsed through places while we were in Rome. They're gorgeous, like resorts, really. Group dinners, organized outings, even shuttle service for shopping. You'd never be alone again. I stayed quiet, letting them build their pitch, their performance. They sat there brimming with confidence, certain their European vacation had earned them the right to reorganize my life. The best part, Amelia added sweetly, is that you wouldn't have to worry about safety or responsibility anymore. Trained staff on call, all day, every day. It's really the responsible choice, David said gravely. Dad would have wanted to know you were cared for. Dragging Frank's memory into their scheme was cruel. I kept my face neutral. These places must cost quite a bit, I said. A flicker passed between them, the first crack. Well, yes, Amelia admitted. But, Mom, this house is just sitting here. You don't need all this space. Selling it would easily cover years of a very comfortable lifestyle. David nodded, seizing the moment. And you've always said you wanted your money used wisely. What could be wiser than investing in your own care? I tilted my head as though considering. You've certainly put a lot of thought into this. Relief spread across Amelia's face. We have, Claire. We love you, and we just want what's best. David cleared his throat. We've even made some preliminary calls. Just inquiries, nothing binding. How considerate, I murmured. And when were you imagining this transition? David shifted uneasily. Sooner is better. These communities often have waiting lists. And at your age, it's easier to adapt now than later. At my age. As if 72 meant the grave was already calling. I see. And you've narrowed it down? Amelia lit up, scrolling through her phone. Yes. There's one called Sunny Acres. It's only 20 minutes away. We could visit all the time. They have a garden, a library, even a salon. Look, doesn't it look perfect? She thrust her phone toward me, displaying glossy stock photos of smiling elderly residents. To me, it looked sterile. Lifeless. A place where people waited to be forgotten. It does look very nice, I said calmly. And the cost? About $4,000 a month for the basic apartment, David replied. More if extra care is needed. But with the sale of the house, you'd be set for years. $4,000 a month. Nearly $50,000 a year. In 5 years, $250,000 of my savings, gone, with me locked away. That seems reasonable, I said lightly. Their faces lit with triumph. Amelia leaned forward eagerly. So you'll consider it? I folded my hands in my lap. Oh, I've gone beyond considering. I've already made my decision. The shift was instant. Both of them leaned in, hungry for my surrender. My decision, I said, my voice steady, is that anyone who schemes to shove me in a care home while I pay for their European vacation will never inherit a dime from me. The silence was absolute. Amelia's mouth opened soundlessly. David blinked, stunned. Mom, what are you saying? He stammered. I reached into the side table and pulled out a folder. Inside were the notes I'd found under their mattress, copies of the nursing home research, and the transcript of Amelia's incriminating phone call. Evelyn had arranged everything neatly, like trial evidence. "I'm talking about this," I said, sliding the folder across the coffee table. David snatched it, scanning the pages, his face draining of color. "Amelia, what is this? These notes about Mom's assets, these guardianship forms, did you write these?" "I was just researching options." Amelia's voice pitched high. "Preparing in case Claire needed help." "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I asked coolly. "Because it looks like you plotted to strip me of my independence and bleed me dry. And I heard you myself, Amelia. After she pays for my trip, I'll dump her in a nursing home." "Your words." Amelia flushed white, then scarlet. "You were eavesdropping?" "You forgot to hang up," I replied evenly. "And it's not eavesdropping when you're discussing my life and my money." David's hands trembled as he flipped through the folder. "You laughed about Mom being gullible? About her being useless?" His voice cracked. "Amelia, tell me this isn't real." She faltered. Maybe I did say some things, but..." "You called me the old woman," I cut in. "Said you were sick of pretending to care. And David, you weren't innocent. You agreed with her. Said you were tired of my calls. That I needed professional supervision." His face twisted with guilt. "Mom, I never said it like that. Not those exact words, perhaps. But you agreed to the plan." Amelia's mask slipped. Her voice turned sharp, venomous. "Fine. Maybe I did say it. But it's true, Claire. You are older. You forget things. You need more help than you admit. We were planning for the inevitable." "The inevitable?" I repeated. "You mean the day you could legally rob me blind?" "It's not stealing if it's family money." Amelia snapped. "David is your only child. It belongs to him anyway. We're just making sure it's used responsibly." David turned on her, eyes blazing. "Sandra, stop. It's Mom's money. She worked for it. She saved it. It's hers." Amelia let out a bitter laugh. "Don't act righteous. How many times have you complained about visiting her? About hearing the same stories? About fixing her computer? You wanted her somewhere safe as much as I did. That's not the same as plotting to lock her up." David's voice cracked, raw. I sat back, watching them unravel. Part of me felt satisfaction, part of me felt deep sorrow. My son. My only son. "Enough," I said firmly, cutting through their chaos. Both turned toward me, startled. "I want you out of my house. And hear me clearly, you will never touch another penny of mine. Not my accounts, not my home, not my choices. If you try to declare me incompetent, the law is already on my side. If you contest my will, you'll discover most of it now belongs to charity." Amelia's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. We have children. A mortgage. You can't just abandon us." "Watch me," I said, rising and pointing to the door. "Your debt isn't my burden. Your greed isn't my problem." David's eyes were wet as he whispered, "Mom, please, can't we fix this? Can't we talk?" For a split second, I almost faltered. But then I remembered Amelia's cruel laughter, the years of manipulation disguised as love. "The time for talking," I said coldly, "was before you reduced me to a dollar sign with wrinkles. Now you'll learn how to stand on your own." They left in silence, Amelia storming, David trailing behind, his face torn with regret that might have been real. But regret had no power here. Not anymore. As I watched their car vanish, a wave of peace settled over me. Not loneliness. Not fear. But peace. The confrontation I had dreaded for months was over. And I hadn't just survived it. I had won. 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it had before. My home was quiet, yes, but filled with light. The air wasn't heavy with fear or manipulation, it was mine again. And for the first time in years, I was free. The silence that once pressed down on me now felt like liberation. I woke when I pleased, ate what I liked, and filled my evenings with my favorite shows, without anyone rolling their eyes or sighing impatiently. The safeguards Evelyn had put in place proved invaluable. 2 weeks after I cut Amelia and David out of my life, they tried to fight back. They hired an attorney to challenge my competency. But Dr. Klein's thorough evaluation, combined with the folder of evidence Evelyn had compiled, shut their case down before it could begin. Their lawyer even warned them to walk away quietly, pursuing it further might expose them to elder abuse charges. I later heard through acquaintances that their lives unraveled without my financial safety net. David had taken on a second job. Amelia, who hadn't worked in years, was forced into full-time employment. Their extravagant European getaway had been charged almost entirely to credit cards, and without me to bail them out, the debt crushed them. A small part of me pitied them, especially David. But a larger part knew this was the lesson they needed. I had enabled their dependence for far too long. Without me, they finally had to face the consequences of their own choices. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. On my porch stood a woman I didn't recognize, with a teenage girl beside her. When the girl's face lit up and she shouted, "Grandma Claire," my breath caught. "Lily!" I cried, pulling my 16-year-old granddaughter into my arms. She had grown taller, her features sharper, but her eyes still carried the warmth I remembered from when she was small. "This is my friend's mom, Mrs. Patterson," Lily explained, gesturing to the woman beside her. "She drove me over because I wanted to see you." Mrs. Patterson smiled kindly. "Lily's been talking about you non-stop. She asked me to bring her here. I hope that's all right." "Of course," I said warmly. "Come in." As we sat in the living room, Lily glanced around. "The house feels different, Grandma. Brighter." She was right. In the months since the confrontation, I had redecorated, not for Amelia's tastes, but for mine. Cheerful colors, artwork I loved, furniture arranged for comfort. Frank's old office was now a craft room, brimming with half-finished projects. For the first time in years, the house reflected me. "I've made some changes," I told her. "How's school?" "Good," she grinned. "I made varsity soccer, and I'm taking AP Art History. I love it." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Grandma, I know what happened with Mom and Dad." My heart sank. "Sweetheart, you don't need to carry that weight." "I do," she said firmly, her eyes flashing with Frank's same stubbornness. "Mom told Jake and me that you cut them off because you were selfish." "But Dad..." "Dad told me the truth. About the phone call. About Mom's plan. He cried when he told me. I've never seen him cry before." Tears pricked my eyes. Even after everything, knowing that David regretted it gave me a bittersweet comfort. "He said he went along with it because Mom convinced him it was for your own good. But he knows now how wrong it was. He doesn't think you'll ever forgive him." "And what do you think?" I asked softly. Lily thought for a moment. "I think Mom was terrible. I think Dad should have stopped her. But I also think you made it easy for them. You kept giving, even when they didn't deserve it. Mom pushes people until they break. You let her." Her words cut deep but rang true. At 16, she had seen clearly what had taken me years to admit. "You're wise beyond your years," I said. She smiled faintly. I get that from you. Mom says I'm too much like my grandmother. She meant it as an insult, but I take it as a compliment. Mrs. Patterson gently interjected. Lily's had a rough time since all this. Her parents fight constantly. She wondered if she could spend some time here, if you'd be open to it. I would love that, I said immediately. Then turned to Lily. But what about your parents? Dad said it's my choice. Mom, well, she said things I don't want to repeat. But I'm 16. I can decide who I want in my life. We spent the afternoon talking, really talking. Lily told me about her classes, her friends, her hopes for college. I shared stories of my new hobbies, my volunteer work at the shelter, and the joy I'd rediscovered in painting. You seem different, Lily said at one point. Stronger. More like yourself. I feel more like myself, I admitted. For so long, I was trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. I forgot how to be Claire. I like Claire, she said firmly. I like her a lot. As Mrs. Patterson prepared to leave, Lily hugged me tightly. Can I come again next weekend? Maybe even stay overnight sometimes? I'd love that. But Lily, you need to know something. I'll always love your dad, and maybe someday we'll rebuild. But I'll never go back to the way things were. I won't let anyone treat me like a burden again. I wouldn't want you to, she said simply. You deserve better. After they left, I sat in my garden at sunset, reflecting on the unexpected gift of my granddaughter's loyalty. Amelia had tried to cut me off from the children, to erase me from their lives. But Lily was strong enough to see through it, brave enough to choose me anyway. That evening, my phone rang. Evelyn's voice came through. Claire, I thought you'd want to hear this. I learned through colleagues that Amelia and David are divorcing. I wasn't surprised. Financial ruin, betrayal, mistrust, no marriage could survive that storm. How do you feel about it? Evelyn asked gently. Sad for them, I admitted. Especially for the kids. But not guilty. Their choices led them here. That's healthy, she said. Oh, and David's attorney contacted me. He wants to know if you'd consider meeting with him privately. To apologize. 6 months earlier, I would have leapt at the chance. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Tell him I'm willing, but only with conditions. Amelia stays out of it. Any relationship we rebuild will be based on respect, not money. And he needs to know trust takes time. Understood, Evelyn said. Claire, I have to tell you, you've become one of my most inspiring clients. The strength you've shown, it's remarkable. After the call, I walked through my home, turning on lamps one by one. Each room told my story now, my choices, my colors, my joy. The guest room that once hid Amelia's betrayal now held clean sheets and fresh flowers, ready for Lily. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago, lonely, desperate for approval, blind to manipulation. That woman had feared solitude so much she accepted cruelty disguised as love. But solitude, I'd learned, wasn't loneliness. Solitude could be peace. Now I had friends from my art class and book club. I had volunteer work that filled my days with purpose. Most importantly, I had myself back, the Claire who built a life with Frank, who raised a son, who was strong enough to stand up when it mattered most. A text buzzed from Lily, "Thank you for today, Grandma. I love you. Can't wait for next weekend." Smiling, I typed back, "I love you too. I'll bake your favorite cookies." Later, as I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Gray hair, wrinkles, yes, but eyes alight with confidence and peace. A woman who knew her worth. A woman no one could diminish again. In my jewelry box, Amelia's cheap pendant still lay where I had tossed it. But beside it now sat a silver locket Lily had bought me with her babysitting money. Engraved on it were the words, "World's Best Grandma." Some people, I'd learned, are worth the investment of love. Others are worth the investment of boundaries. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. As I turned out the lights and slipped into bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not just peace. Not just safety. But pure, unshakable contentment. At 72, I wasn't at the end of my story. I was just beginning.